Hey travelers, I've been, I wouldn't say meditating on it because I haven't really sunk it to that depth yet, but I've been playing with the idea because now people are reaching their breaking point and now they're beginning I don't want to say to get violent, some are, but they're beginning to revolt. And now that seems to be not such a far off option. It's freed up my mind a little bit to explore long-term solutions. Because even if a bloody revolution is what's necessary, it's not a long-term solution. Before 9/11, my great work in life, my magnum opus, was going to be revolutionizing the education system, a complete overhaul to teach students how to think, not what to think, to not criticize unless you have solutions. And of course, I got sidetracked. I was idealistic when I was younger. I didn't understand the world very well, and I believed the bullshit, and it completely sidetracked me. But I think, and although changing our education system in America is very important, I think at a more fundamental level in the United States, whether we completely crash and become an absolute third world country, because listen, I've been warning people about BRICS. I've been telling people it's going to replace the dollar. America's going to crash, and everybody, oh, you're crazy. You're crazy. Trump laughs at BRICS. You're crazy. Look, man, not only was I trained to see patterns and predict the future, project into what is the most likely, what's the highest probability outcome on the course we're on, to feel the currents and the tides and which way they're shifting. This is what I do, dude. You know, I knew we were going to crash, but we're going to need to change our economic system. Whether capitalism from its creation was a pyramid scheme or whether it became that way over time through corruption, I don't care. I care about where we're at now. I'm not a historian, and more importantly, I'm not an economist. I remember getting so pissed off in college. That was the only class I ever got a C in, was economy. And it's because it's boring to me. It doesn't engage me. It doesn't interest me. I have no interest in money. But we're going to need to change our economy. And growing up, I don't know if it was just my household or if it was just a product of my times. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, being called a commie was worse than being called a racist back then. Now, being called a racist is worse than being called a commie. But back then, oh, what are you, a commie? Oh, you want health care? You want to help people? You know, and I don't think communism is the answer. Nor do I think socialism is the answer. But we need to find an answer. A new, I'll say, political product, or Sorry, my dog's being a gooner and it's distracting me. Um, uh, uh, yeah, we do. I'm getting distracted because now my mind's going to politics, and we do need a new political project, because that's all this is. Republicans, Democrats, all this bullshit. It's all political projects. And what do you do with a project? What do you do with an experiment if it's failing? You either modify it or you discard it and attempt something different. And that's what it's time to do with the Republicans, Democrats, capitalism, hell, even communism. Because whether or not the goal, like that Russian defector said, is to bring us in, make us communists, even if that's the goal, reject it. You don't have to accept what they're pushing for. Just because they're pushing for it and they have the illusion of power, that doesn't mean you have to go along with it. In the same way we need to reject capitalism, which has failed Americans, we need to reject communism and socialism. There's plenty of examples where it's failed. I really can't think of one where it succeeded. I don't know that I would... Stop being a gooner, bro. You act like you're a horny teenager. I just don't want you to distress her out, man. She's too old for that silly stuff. She's too old for that. She doesn't even understand what you're doing, man. But we need a new economic experiment. And some people could say, well, look at China, they're being successful with it. Yeah, well, like I said, I'm not an economist, but they're not a communist either. They're some sort of corporate mutant. I don't know what word I'm looking for. There's some amalgamation. I don't know. But they're not truly communist. There's some sort of, and maybe that's what we need to find, is a system where we're not really capitalist. We incorporate other things, but like this corporate oligarchy, because as far as I can tell, looking through history, America's always been an oligarchy, always, from the beginnings, the founding fathers, the initial colonies. Like, we've always been an oligarchy. We've always been run by oligarchs, whether they were British, American, now globalists. We need... The American experiment has failed, as it is. We need to accept where we are, not what we want to be or what we should have been. We need to accept what we are, and we need to change, because capitalism has failed us. The dual party, even the tri-party, you've got Republicans, Democrats, Independents. Well, when does independence ever win anything, right? So the political systems failed us, the economic systems failed us, the education systems failed us, and we need to create something new that we have not experimented with. And we can do that. My brain is not what it used to be. My temperament and my patience is not what it used to be. But there are people out there that are highly intelligent. And maybe you don't want a violent revolution because you couldn't defend yourself from, a tiny dog or an angry squirrel. Okay. Well, are you smart? Are you creative? Are you a good... I really like the term solutionary. I took that from Maj Touré. I've got a playlist of his. If you want to check him out, he's cool, man. But, you have something, and there are intelligent people out there. There are creative people out there. There are good inventors out there, which get stifled or murdered because of the patent agency. Another thing we need to correct, in addition to the Federal Reserve. There's so much to do. You can contribute. We need to create something new. If you're an academic or that's published. You know, if you're just, you know, a closet genius who just sucks at academia because you're either too honest or you're just not interested, man, this is your time to shine, man. Like, but we need solutions. We need long-term solutions, because even if I'm correct that a violent revolution is the only way to bring accountability and change our system, even if I'm correct, that's a short-term thing. Unless you really do want to sink into chaos and just have warlords running around, but I don't believe that's going to happen. We need long-term solutions, and we have intelligent, creative, innovative people that can do that. And now we have influencers out here who have millions of followers and a lot of reach, and if you can get those ideas to them, they can get your ideas out, and this builds momentum. And don't be distraught if you fail over and over. It happens. That's how you pick yourself up. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. Now you know what not to do. Now you know who not to talk to. Like, it's okay if it takes time to gain momentum, because in physics, the longer it takes to get something in motion, an object in motion, the longer that object stays in motion. So be patient. If our enemy's agenda is 2030, you've got years, man. You've got years. This doesn't have to happen, and it's not gonna happen overnight. But we need to get new ideas, new experiments, new movements in motion, and give them the opportunity, bring them from possibility into actuality, and then from that point on, they're allowed to gain momentum. Thank you for your time. Next time, travelers.